Okay, let's try to go to the next one here. I'm going to say now we're going from the 4 to the 5 again. So we're going from this E to the F, which would be a half step, but we're going to go down to this string down here and find the F down here. So we're going to be walking up in shape. So from the first to the second, second to the third, uh-oh, there's my formula, to the third, and then instead of going from the 3 to the 4 here, we're going to go from the 3 and jump down to the 4 here, and then continue on this string, and as we do so, we'll compare to the top string and think about the position in terms of modal position. Okay. So how do I know that this is going to be a half step? So that's a half step here. It's a half step here. You can see it's an octave away, but if I count from here, it should be a 1 note away half step. I can say it's 5 distance here, 10, and then 11, 12, or octave, which goes back down to 0 if I think about it as a circle, and then 1 note away. So it's a 1 note away distance here. So if I count that out on the guitar, I could say here's the E. I'm looking for a 1 note away distance. It's going to be 5, 10, 11, 12, and then there's the 1. So there's going to be, whoop, that don't sound right. It's going to be 5 from this E, 10, 11, 12, or octave, and then we're going to get to this F. That is right. It sounds tensiony, of course, because it's a 1 note away. All right, so if I count this up, we're going to say we're going from the first to the second to a whole step to the third. Instead of going a half step to the 4 here, we're going to go half step to the 4 here. Now it's a jump up in octave, so it sounds a little bit out of whack, but it's still in the key, right? And then we're going jumping the octave up, and then we're going to go along this one down here. So now I'm on this F. So I'm on this F, which is going to be, that one went from the 3 to the 4. So now I'm going from the 4 to the 5. So now we went from the 3 to the 4. So now we're going to go from the 4 to the 5. So notice we're on the same Lydian, which is at the bottom of the box. Here's the Lydian at the bottom of the box. From the perspective of the major here, if I went to this C and measured it, it would be a 5 note away perfect fourth distance. How do I know that? 5 notes away, because I can count that at 5, 10, 15. Once I get to 15, there's 12 notes in the musical alphabet. 15 minus 12 is 3. And so 3, 2, 1. Wait a sec. 3, 4, 5. 5 note away distance. All right, from here. Oops. Okay, so then let's say we're going to move from the 4, from the 4th to the 5th is going to be a whole step. So we're going to go from that 4th, let's say, to this 5th with the yellow. So it's going to be 4th to the 5th is a whole step. And then if I look at this 5th, that C then, it's now, that G is the 4th, which is the Lydian to the Mixolydian. So Lydian to Mixolydian is always a whole step, and the Mixolydian lives in what I call the 2 note per string, the double stop with the D major, the Mixolydian being a major, the D, this is a Dorian. The Mixolydian is a major mode, but it doesn't live in the house because it hangs out with the blues, because it has like that minor 7 to it. If I look at the interval from the C to this G, that would be, from the perspective of the C, a 5 note away perfect 5th. How do I count that? I could say it's going to be 5. If I count that up this way, it's going to be 5, 10, 15, and then 15 minus 12 will be 3, 3, 4, so it would be 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So it's a 7 note away distance, which would be a 7 note away perfect 5th. Oops, not there. And then that G can also be pulled over here because it's on the 12th fret, which repeats over here. So let's bring it back to the open G. And so now let's go from the 5th to the 6th. So we're going to go from the 5th to the 6th is a whole step. And we're going from the G to the A. So the 5th to the 6th is going to be an open G to the A. So that goes from Mixolydian to Aeolian. So the Aeolian is in the what I would call the hamburger shape here. And if I compare that to the C up top, that would be a 9-note away major 6 distance. How do we know that? Because I can say this is going to be 5, 10, 15. 15 minus 12 is 3, 2, 1, 0, or octave, or 12, because I can go around the horn, 12, 11, 10, 9. 9-note away. By the way, what's the distance from the Lydian? If I looked at it from the perspective of the Lydian, then we would say from the perspective of the Lydian, why am I getting into that? I'm muddying things up. It would be a distance of, let's count it out, it would be 5, 10, and then 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, which would be a perfect fourth. So let me convert that to kind of see what that means. If I was in the Lydian mode from that E, if I think about it as the root, then it would be relative position 4 to relative position 1, which would be 4 minus 3 to get it to 1, which means the Aeolian would also have to subtract 3, so it would be 6 minus 3 would be 3. So it would be from the perspective of a Lydian mode, the first of the Lydian to the third of the Lydian, which would be going from Lydian to Aeolian. So in other words, if I went down to Lydian, moved the Lydian, wait, what am I on here? I was doing that from the F, the Lydian, from this F, measuring it from the F. I should be measuring it from the E. If I measured it from the E, then it would be 3 minus 2 would be 1, and then the Aeolian would be 6 minus 2, which would be 4. So it would be the 1 of the Phrygian to the 4 of the Phrygian. In other words, if I switched the Phrygian and I said, okay, now the absolute mode number 3, Phrygian, is now relative position 1, then the absolute mode number 6, Aeolian, the A, is now relative position 4. You see how the orientation's getting a little wacky? I'd like to be able to change my mind to be able to see it from all those different kind of perspectives is kind of like the idea here. Okay, so that means then what if I go from the Aeolian from the 7, from the 6 to the 7, from the 6 to the 7 here is going to be a whole step going from this A to this B. So going from this A to this B. So A to B is a whole step, and that's going from the Aeolian absolute mode number 6 to absolute mode number 7. The Locrian is living at the top of the box here, which I can see here, except it's been shifted up because this tectonic plate shifted to the right because the fault line is between those tectonic plates. And the Locrian, from the perspective of the major scale, is going to be an 11-note away major 7, which I can count by saying it's going to be 5, 10, 15. 15 minus 12 is 3, 2, 1, 0, or octave, and then 12 minus 1 is 11, getting us to that B. So if I looked at this C to the B, that would be an 11-note away major 7. What if I looked at it from the perspective of the E, the Phrygian? Well, if I looked at it from the perspective of the Phrygian, then I'd be saying it would be going from, the Phrygian is 3. I'm going to make it the 1. 3 minus 2 makes it the 1. So that would be, and I'd do the same for the Locrian, which would be 7 minus 2, 7, 6, 5. So I would be going from the 1 of the Phrygian to the 5 of the Locrian. So if I scroll down to the Phrygian, now the Phrygian is the relative position 1, which would be that E, to the 5 of the Phrygian, which is now absolute position, or relative position 5 is now the absolute mode number 7 Locrian. So whenever I go from E to B, so that's when I go from E to B, that's going to be a 7-note away perfect fifth, I think. Okay, got that. All right, let's go from the 7 to the 1, which is going to be a half step. So it goes around the horn back up to the 1, half step, boom. So we're going from the Locrian, or the 7 of the major scale, half step to the 1 of the major scale. There's the major scale. That's the top right of the house, noting that this tectonic plate shifted to the right, so it's the same shape up here, except diagonally shifted because of that fault line. And so there is that. That's back to the Ionian mode. So, and that's the octave. If I go up to here, that's the octave. So from the perspective of the C, it's 12 notes away. We can count that out by saying it's going to be 5, 10, 15. 15 minus 12 is 3, and then 2, 1, 0, or octave. If I look at it from the perspective of the Phrygian, Phrygian is absolute mode number 3. 3 minus 2 brings us to the first position. Therefore, if I take the Ionian, minus 2, it's mode number 1, right? Minus 2 brings me to 0, and then negative 1. I can't have a negative mode, so 7 minus 1 brings us to the 6. Is that right? If I look at it from the Phrygian as the 1 is the Ionian's 6, right? So if I looked at it from the perspective of the Phrygian, the relative mode number 3 Phrygian is now, the absolute mode 3 Phrygian is now relative position 1, and then going to the 6 would be the absolute mode 1 or Ionian. So going from E to C then is an 8 note away major 6. So if I measured it from here, 8 note away major 6, it would be 5 from this E, 5, 10, 9, 8. 8 note away major 6. Whew, head is starting to hurt. All right, let's go from the first to the second. So from the first to the second is a whole step. First to the second is a whole step. So now we're going from the C, the first, to the second, which is a D, or Ionian to Dorian. So Ionian to Dorian, that Dorian then position relative to the C is a 2 note away major second. How can I know that? I can count it. It would be 5, 10, 15. 15 minus 12 is negative 3, and then 2. So that would be a 2 note away major second. What would it be with respect to the Phrygian? Well, the Phrygian is mode number 3. 3 minus 2 would bring it to 1, and therefore the Dorian minus 2 would bring it to 0. But you have to have, it has to be 1 through 7, so 7 minus 0 would be 7. So from the perspective of the Dorian, it would be going from the first to the 7, right? So let's check that out. If I make the Dorian the 1, it's now the 1, absolute mode number 2. Dorian goes to wait a sec. No, I'm going to the Phrygian, making the Phrygian the 1. Relative position 1, absolute mode number 3, Phrygian, going to relative position 7, which is now absolute mode number 2, the Dorian, brings us from the E to the D, which is a 10 note away minor 7. How can I double check that it's 10 notes away? If I count from this, it would be 5 and then 10 notes away. Okay, it makes perfect sense. So now we're going from that, from the second to the third is a whole step. Second to the third is a whole step. And so we're going from the D to the E. So the second to the third is a whole step. So that brings us to the third. That goes from the Dorian to the Phrygian. The Phrygian's at the basement of the box or house. And so what's the relation between it and the C, the major or Ionian? It's going to be a 4 note away major third. How can I count that? It's going to be 5, 10, 15. 15 minus 12 is 3, and then 4. Okay, 4 note away major third. From the perspective of the C, from the perspective of the Phrygian, it's obviously the octave, 12 note away octave. So it's going to be 5, 10, 11, 12. All right, let's try the next string. See if I can do it a little bit